So now we're getting into stupid season already. I thought we'd wait a little bit for this to begin and this to start up, but apparently not. Apparently it was going to happen, and I was wrong on how quickly this would happen, and shame on me. Apparently now we are going to get into an environment where it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Stop. It is so stupid. And if Kansas lawmakers are going to go ahead with it, then shame on them. If they're going to be taken to the cleaners, if they're going to set themselves up to be fleeced, if they're going to set their taxpayers up to be fleeced, then shame on them. That's the message that needs to get across loud and clear. I know all the local TV stations were talking and doing some of this yesterday, and I want to play some of the audio that I got from around town. Let's start here. David Haley is a state legislator in KCK. He talked to Channel 9 KMBC and said this.
But I do think it's doable. We have a proven track record for successfully bringing large entertainment and economic development venues to the state in this region already.
Okay, you do. And are you just going to give the teams or one of the teams whatever they want? Are you going to write a check with your taxpayers' hard-earned money to a sports team? Is that what you're going to do? Do you think that's the best investment for your team to go on an ego trip? Is that really the play if you're the state of Kansas and specifically Wyandotte County? And none of this can get done, by the way, without the state. Wyandotte County does not have the tax base itself to do any of this. There are 160,000 people in Wyandotte County. There are 700,000 people in Jackson County. You're not going to pass a sales tax unless you're talking about a 2-cent sales tax or something stupid like that to equate to the amount of money that you would need to get one or both of these teams over to your side of the state line. So then you need state monies. And yeah, Kansas has a nice rainy day fund, but I talked to multiple sources in Topeka who said there's not any chance this is going to happen. At the very least, there's no way this is going to happen this year. The legislative session is all but over. They've got a few weeks left for the legislative session in Kansas. That's it. After that, it's done till next year. Could they go back to the drawing board? Could they potentially try and go about this in 2025? Maybe. But it also would behoove the sports teams themselves to go back to the drawing board where they're at in Jackson County and see what actually works and see what makes the most sense. If you think Kansas Republicans are going to, by the way, make Laura Kelly look like a rock star by letting her get the Chiefs over to Kansas, you are smoking some seriously good stuff. It might be coming over from Missouri, by the way. But you're not living in the political world that we've been following and that we do follow on a daily basis. It's just not going to happen.
I was thinking the protracted nature of what happened here in Jackson County leads us like things half done and 3/4 done that you don't just abandon, maybe, right?
Well, that's what I would think.
Seems like.
You've got all this equity already built up in Jackson County. And I know the teams don't care for Frank White. They don't care for the legislators. And by the way, I don't blame them. For the most part, they're all a bunch of goobers. But you've made it this far, and yeah, you lost. You lost. But you can still get what you need. There still are incredible benefits, by the way, to reigniting the conversation where you're at. Not just running to Kansas and trying to fleece them. That makes absolutely no sense. And then you have sports radio hosts in this town who, I mean, are just really pathetic, and they don't know what they're talking about, who are, according to social media, which is where I'm seeing some of this, they're saying, I'm told the Kansas governor has the ability to get her hands on over $1 billion right now without even going to a public vote. I'm reading that quote verbatim here.
Wow.
Do you guys know how this works? There's this thing called the legislature, Like, that's the thing. These guys are so out of their lane. There's this thing called the legislature. The governor does not take $1 billion and just plop the bag of money on the table and pass it over to the Chiefs like it's a drug deal.
Unless you got one of those emails from the Nigerian prince.
Yeah. That's true. Unless you get one of those. That's not how this works. There's a legislative process. And these sports guys, some of whom are on in the mornings when I'm on, are really just pathetic characters. I mean, they have just completely dropped their pants for billionaires, and it's quite pathetic to watch it play out. And they have the worst sources in this town. But they scream, they give themselves, weird nicknames, and they think that, I guess, you like that, and you're interested in hearing that kind of nonsense. But I'm here to tell you that the people I talk to every day in Topeka, like every single day, shot it down and shot it down quickly. And the other thing that you're hearing, and you've seen this on TV, you're hearing this on social media, is, well, what about all the sports gambling money? Whoa, there's a lot of, Mark's placing a lot of bets, but I promise you, Mark's not self-funding the sports gambling fund in Kansas, unless his bets have gotten a lot bigger here in recent weeks and he hasn't told us.
No, I haven't given that much.
Okay, all right, I didn't think so. So let me tell you how much money is in the coffers for the sports betting fund in Kansas that is set up to lure professional sports to the state. That is true. All right, I'm willing to give you that. But what are we actually looking at here? What does it actually mean? How much money is it realistically? Well, last year it was about $4 million. This year it's projected to be about $7 million. We were talking about a vote on Tuesday that over the 40-year span would have raised $2 billion with a B dollars for both of these teams. Kansas comes over with its little crumbs. We've got $11 million for you here. $11 million in our coffers. Oh, will you take it, Kansas City Chiefs? $11 million in our gambling monies? It's a freaking joke, John.
Put your pennies away, kid. You're breaking my heart.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a joke. The sports gambling money has not raised nearly as much as the state would have expected, and it's not going to anytime soon. So stop with that nonsense. Stop thinking that Kansas is right around. Oh, boy, they should just, pack up, go to Kansas. It is what it is. Don't forget, this happened 20 years ago. 2004, Jackson County voters, or really it was more of a bi-state thing, multi-county vote, but it went down in flames. What happened? They came back to the drawing board. They got it done in 2006. That would be the best case scenario for the entire region to get a better deal, a more transparent deal, and a process that makes sense for everybody. To leave the Chiefs where they are, and then, you know what? If the Royals want to move downtown, maybe they take a second look at Clay County. Maybe that makes more sense. But bringing in the state of Kansas to feed politicians' egos is a complete waste of time. And pitting state taxpayer against state taxpayer for what purpose is a complete waste of time. 913-408-7957. That's our studio line and our text line on a Thursday morning on KCMO. We'll talk to Mayor Quinton Lucas for the first time since Tuesday's vote went down in flames. He, of course, ended up endorsing vote yes. That was a massive miscalculation by him. Hey, I've had those. We've all had them before, but boy, that was a miscalculation on his part. So he's going to be here at 7:30 on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM, and the KCMO Talk Radio app. Next, Rashee Rice, he has spoken, the Chiefs wide receiver, after what happened in that 6-car crash in Dallas. And Patrick Mahomes Sr. also is facing up to a decade in prison after his felony DWI indictment. We'll get to the latest on those stories coming up next. We finally have heard from Rashee Rice. This came down on his Instagram account yesterday afternoon. Rashee Rice writing, "Today I met with Dallas PD investigators regarding Saturday's accident." Of course, if you haven't seen the video, if you have not heard the story, the Chiefs wide receiver was potentially involved in this 6-car accident that involved a Lamborghini. and a Corvette that were, not clear if it was a race, a road rage incident, but they caused a multi-vehicle accident that did leave multiple people with minor injuries, at least. The Lamborghini was leased to Rashee Rice. But we don't know if he was driving the car, and frankly, we really don't know if he was even there. It's not clear whether or not he was one of the guys that was walking away from the car. But basically, these guys who caused the crash in the Lamborghini and the Corvette just walked away from the scene. It is beyond the pale when it comes to irresponsibility. And I don't know if this is something that Rashee Rice had when it came to red flags in his background. I don't know anything about that. He played at SMU down there in Dallas. He grew up down there. So I don't know if this is a guy who is just hanging out with the boys and got into some trouble and lent them the Lamborghini. I don't know. We don't know. But this is potentially a colossal mistake for a guy who was just wrapping up an incredible rookie season and was frankly poised to be Patrick Mahomes' number one guy in 2024. So his Instagram reads, "Today I met with Dallas PD investigators regarding Saturday's accident. I take full responsibility for my part in this matter and will continue to cooperate with the necessary authorities. I sincerely apologize to everyone impacted in Saturday's accident." So, that's legalese right now. There's nothing to really add to what Rashee Rice had to say, but the Chiefs still have not commented on it. The NFL is monitoring the matter, and that's all we know. Well, I shouldn't say that because the Chiefs have commented on it. They've commented on it in one place, and that is on this show when we had Mark Donovan, the team president, on the show on Monday to talk about the sales tax initiative on Tuesday. But, of course, I had to ask about Rashee Rice, and Mark Donovan said this.
Is there anything you can share with fans on this Rashee Rice situation that we're all monitoring and looking at right now?
Yeah, I think that in all these situations, you have to wait until you have all the facts. And frankly, we don't have all the facts at this point. The one comforting fact that we do have is that there was a multi-car crash in Texas and in Dallas. And fortunately, it doesn't appear that anyone was hurt. And we should be grateful for that. We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll gather the facts, and then we'll react accordingly.
All right, so that was Mark Donovan on this show on Monday. That's really been the only public comment from the Chiefs on this whole issue, and that's how that comment got picked up by TMZ. It was on Good Morning America. It was on Lester Holt's Nightly News the other night.
Tonight, the NFL not commenting, but the Chiefs president telling KCMO Talk Radio this.
We'll get to the bottom of it. We'll gather the facts, and then we'll react accordingly.
Dallas police are not saying if Rice was involved in the actual crash, and they're asking for the public's help in identifying the men in the video. Lester?
Priscilla Thompson, thank you.
Oh, Lester Holt. There he is. All right, Les, how did I sound there, big boy? How do we do on KCMO? Lester Holt, Nightly News. That was 2 nights ago. So that's the only place that anybody involved with the Chiefs have talked about this, and it's on this show. Something tells me the way that everybody has been so buttoned up that this is a very treacherous situation for Rashee Rice. I don't know if he was there. We don't know if he was there. People are assuming he's one of the guys that was walking away from the car, but no one's confirmed that. And frankly, I look at some of the guys walking away from the car, and I don't see him. But that's just me. It's weird because the football players, you don't really know their faces as well unless it's like a Patrick Mahomes or a Travis Kelce because they got the helmets on. Like, yeah, if it's number 4, I could tell you who it is. But if Rashee Rice just walks by me in a crowded mall or something or at the airport, I don't necessarily know that it's him. Not going to lie. So, Mark's watched every second of every preseason practice that he can find, and you're not sure if that guy that everyone says is Rashee Rice is actually Rashee Rice.
Yeah, it's tough to tell.
It is. That's what I thought. So we just have to monitor this, but at least the guy said something on social media when it came to Saturday's accident. Now, Patrick Mahomes Sr., let's get to him here. He is now facing up to 10 years in prison after felony DWI indictment that came down here yesterday. So he's been charged driving while intoxicated for a third time or more. This happened February 3rd, down in Texas right before the Super Bowl. He could receive a 10-year prison sentence and a $10,000 fine if convicted. He's been charged with drunk driving multiple times. The indictment was made here in the last few days, and the arrest came right before the Super Bowl. So, listen, is he going to spend 10 years in prison? No. No, he's not. But this is now a guy who has received a second DWI charge in 2018. This is number 3. And how many times could it have happened in between there? Like, he was driving around with an open 16-ounce Coors beer in the center console. It's not the first time he's done that. It's not the third time he's done that. It's the third time he's gotten caught doing that. That's the problem for him. So, how does this end up playing out for the guy when it comes to his legal issues? That remains to be seen. But clearly, right now, you look at some of the legal problems that are surrounding this team, not good. Now, do I think this played any role in what happened on Tuesday? No. There were some folks who reached out to me and said, that Rashee Rice, final straw, another reason to vote no. No, you don't vote no on Tuesday because a couple of the players might have been acting like dopes. No, that's not what this is about. Players come and go. Players are here one year, they're gone the next. You hope a guy like Patrick Mahomes is around for at least a decade, but if you're voting on issues of local importance, if you're voting on sales taxes based on who the wide receiver is and what kind of dumb thing he may have been involved with over the weekend, that's a bad job by you. That doesn't make an ounce of sense. Don't even bother. It's irrelevant. These votes should and have to come down to actually the important things. What's it worth to you, your tax dollars? Is that money well spent? Should people be spending their money, their 3/8 sales tax, a regressive tax on things like stadiums? That's what it should be about, not anything to do with Rashee Rice getting potentially in trouble for his rental car in Dallas being involved in a multi-vehicle pileup. That's not what it should be about. But, listen, understand during these emotional times, it's going to be part of the equation. 913-408-7957 as we get it rolling on a Thursday morning on KCMO Talk Radio. Mayor Quinton Lucas will be here in 1 hour at 7:30. Don't miss that. Stream it if you have to at KCMOTalkRadio.com or, of course, on the KCMO Talk Radio app. Coming up, the guy involved in the Kansas City fire department crash, the firefighter that resulted in 3 people getting killed. He's going back to work. I bleep you not. The guy is going back to work to put out fires. Are you kidding me? We've got the details on why next. I'm all about supporting the men and women who, work for the city, work for our communities, especially when you talk about law enforcement, right? And you're talking about firefighters. I always want to support those guys. But I want to point out that this story is pretty insane. Dominic Biscari, the 23-year-old Kansas City firefighter who was involved in the deadly fire truck crash back in December of 21, can now return to work as a firefighter. KCTV, to its credit, had this first, and they learned through several sources that Biscari will be able to return to work later this month after being fired from the department in February of last year. Emails to both the city and the fire department have not been answered regarding his employment, but KCTV, after 48 hours, has not gotten any kind of response. They've now filed sunshine requests for information. KCTV5 has asked if Biscari has driving privileges and asked for employment dates, which will potentially reveal information surrounding back pay. Now, this goes back to December 15th of 21, and this guy should not be back on the fire department right now. Never mind getting back pay for it. Biscari crashed a pumper truck in Westport on December 15th of 21. 3 people died in that crash. He was fired by the city. He faced criminal charges. But his attorney, writes KCTV5, vowed to help the firefighter get his old job back. saying Dominic was devastated by the crash, and his client was the victim of a perfect storm created by poor city and department policies. His own attorney declined comment. Now, what ended up happening on the legal side of this? That's important too. He was charged with 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter. That's what he ended up getting. Involuntary manslaughter, 3 charges, 3 counts. And then he took what's known as an Alford plea, meaning he did not admit guilt, but acknowledged a judge or jury would likely find him guilty. He was sentenced to 3 years of supervised probation and then was fired by the city. Now compare this. So compare what Jean Peters Baker did there, 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter, to how Eric DeValcanaire has been treated. The former KCPD detective, who was a 20-year officer, many awards, saved a 6-year-old from drowning, who then, of course, did his job, had to shoot Cameron Lamb. He did kill him, but now he's in prison with no end in sight. Think about how Jean Peters Baker is handling that versus how she's handled this. 3 counts of involuntary manslaughter. As I recall, when you go back to that crash in December of 2021, Biscari was flying through town. I mean, and I understand, the red light policy, which has since been changed. He was blasting through red lights. He was going, way too fast for the roads that he was on. And then, of course, 3 people ended up losing their lives in that accident that took place 2.5 years ago now. But talk about a difference in terms of how the prosecutor's office is handling something with the fire department versus the police department. I'm not picking sides between fire and police. That's not the purpose here. It's to point out her wild hypocrisy and her double standard with how she treats a cop versus how she treats someone who's on the fire department, right? It's clear as day that she's treating them differently. Now, maybe it's also about the skin color of the people involved. I hate to just put it out there and be that blunt about it, but that's a conclusion I keep coming to as well. I don't know the skin color of the people that Biscari killed in that car crash, but something tells me I wonder if things were different if Jean Peters Baker would have charged him differently. And same thing with DeValcanaire. We know about Cameron Lamb, but, let's just point out the obvious. Since those things matter to Jean Peters Baker, they should not. They should be irrelevant to what you charge people with. But hey, when it comes to her, there's no morals there. There's not a moral compass that exists in that office. There isn't. It's all about politics. It's all about making sure the narrative is met and the narrative is fed. And now you have Dominic Biscari, who is going to be back on the force. And, personally, my grandpa was a New York City fire captain. So I have complete respect for the job, for what the job entails, for everything that firefighters have to deal with. The job has changed a lot in the last couple of generations. There's no doubt about that. But still, I completely respect the gig. But you're talking about potentially back pay. You're talking about potentially returning to work. Meantime, you got a guy with the police department, 20 years, not really a nick on his record, and he's in prison till who knows when. There is something broken with the system. And, there's going to be a lot to talk to Mayor Quinton Lucas about coming up next hour, but this will be one of the things that we ultimately do touch on. I know we've got to focus a lot on the stadiums, what the future of the stadiums are. If I can keep his answers to under 90 seconds, we can hit more topics. I will try to do that. But I've got to ask him about this because remember, the fire department is under the city. It doesn't have this board like the police department does. And for those who advocate for city control, part of what they say is, well, we have more control. People that you elect have control over the fire department, and that's how it should be. Because we can be a better watchdog on behalf of the taxpayer and the citizen having direct oversight on something like the fire department. Well, now's a chance to see what they actually want to do. What does the mayor's office feel about this potential report of Biscari going back onto the job? Will he be allowed to drive fire trucks? All those things remain to be seen, but, we'll see how it plays out. I want to know if they actually are going to potentially stand up to this, or if they're just going to throw their hands up and say, not our purview. Fire department's going to do what's going to do. And then that will be very telling. That will be telling because then we'll also know that from City Hall's perspective, this is about politics. This is not about true oversight. 913-408-7957. Now, speaking of law enforcement, we just had the 100th police officer shot this year around the country. There has been one police officer shot in this country every 22 hours. Just imagine if the narrative that you got sold back in 2020, which was a complete and utter lie about how unarmed people, especially unarmed people of color, were being targeted by law enforcement, right? You were told that. We were all told that. It was always a lie. We had the numbers. We still have the numbers. We can break them down for you here coming up. But just imagine if the lies that you were told in 2020 were actually pushed forward and you actually got the truth then. If America actually got the truth then, we'd be in a much safer environment right now. Our law enforcement would be in a safer environment right now. And the 100th cop getting shot this year, one every 22 hours getting shot in this country, should tell you all you need to know about how the narrative that has been pushed on you for the better part of 4 years is nothing but a lie. And, of course, we've lost officers right here in our backyard, Officer Allen in Independence, in the last few weeks. So we've dealt with this firsthand here in Kansas City. I'll give you these numbers, and we'll compare them to what the media narrative has been on policing for the last few years and what the facts actually are. Coming up next on KCMO Talk Radio, 95.7 FM and the KCMO Talk Radio app. So you were sold a bill of lies back in 2020. That's nothing new for those of you who have been paying attention and know what's been going on in this country. But, there's a lot of people that are new. They're tuning into the show for the first time. They're maybe just realizing. They're waking up over the last couple of years and they're realizing that there was a lot of nonsense that was spewed and they might have had their head in the sand and they might not have realized what was actually going on in this country at that time. But you were sold a bill of goods. There was a narrative that surrounded this country that unarmed people, especially unarmed people of color, were regularly getting shot by law enforcement in America. And that something needed to be done. Of course, it was in the wake of George Floyd. And it was a lie then, and it is a lie now. I just told you how the 100th cop was shot this year, and it was a cop out of Greenville, North Carolina. That is 100 this year. It's only April the 4th, and that is one officer shot every 22 hours. So now we're sitting here and we're looking at this. We're saying, wow, 21 every 22 hours? Cops being shot? What's going on the other side? How many people have been shot by law enforcement? How many unarmed folks in this country have been shot by law enforcement this year? The answer remains 2. One is back on January 1st. His name was Victor Roblero, an unarmed 48-year-old Hispanic man killed in Spartanburg, South Carolina. So 2 people shot and killed while unarmed by law enforcement in this country this year. And then February 2nd, Rashad Graham, 30-year-old black man killed in Lauderhill, Florida. So there has not been a single unarmed person shot and killed by police in this country in the last 2 months. Yet we have had a cop shot once every 22 hours, more or less, this year. Wake up, America. You were sold a bill of goods. And, it happens sometimes. As long as you're waking up to it, you realize that these things happen. The media pushes a narrative that works for them. And in 2020, it was all about how cops are the bad guys. Cops are terrible. Everyone's Derek Chauvin. George Floyd's a hero. Those are the things that you were told. And it was all in the name of politics, right? It was all about an election year. You were told you could not stand next to your grandmother if she was dying in the hospital. But if you were rioting and burning police precincts on behalf of George Floyd, well, by golly, that's what America needs. It needs a reckoning. It was insane then. And we talked about it here on KCMO, how insane it was then. Of course, back then, we didn't have this monster 100,000 watt FM at 95.7 FM, but we talked about it extensively. And now we're sitting here all these years later, and it seems even more insane. It almost seems like fake to think back to that time. It almost seems made up when you think back to that time. Like, I just picture myself one day talking to grandkids maybe when they're older and they understand the way of the world a little bit and explain to them what we lived through. Maybe my own kids, maybe like Claire and Chloe and Charlotte's a better example when they're older because they don't remember 2020, obviously. Well, Chloe wasn't alive. Charlotte was just born, and Claire was not even 2 years old. So when they're older, when it's appropriate, don't worry, I'm not talking about police shootings when they get to second grade. We're talking like when they're way older. And I explain this time in American history. I hope they look at me like I have 10 heads. I get that look a lot these days from 5-year-olds and 3-year-olds, but I hope that when I tell that story to them when it's appropriate, and I tell them what this country went through and how we diminished and demeaned law enforcement for no reason whatsoever, but because one guy made a mistake in Minneapolis on one day out of these 750,000 cops that patrol these streets every single day in America, we destroyed an entire industry. And we have set back law enforcement for the better part of a generation because of how we destroyed the industry, because of what one individual did in 2020. And it was all in the name of politics. And it becomes more bizarre by the day to think back to that point in time and now to spin it forward and actually have the data and look back and say, what are we doing? I mean, even if you go back to 2020, right? If you go back to 2020, you had 61 unarmed Americans who were ended up getting shot. 61, all of 2020. And 2020 was a bad year, by the way. If you want to break it down by race, 18 unarmed blacks were killed that year by police. The number of whites, 27. Hispanic number was 10. So you can break this all down on the Washington Post website, which I have right in front of me, and I use it all the time. I can share it on my X page. You can see it there for yourself. But just know that as we move forward, hopefully into a place where people start respecting law enforcement again, not having to deal with this nonsense, it's important to have the facts because it is amazing. I'll never forget polling that was done in 21 where Americans were polled on how many unarmed people of color in particular they thought the police killed on a yearly basis. And there were people who thought the number was over 10,000. There was a percentage, I want to say it was like 20% of Americans who thought that 10,000 unarmed people of color were shot and killed by police every year, when the actual number was like 15. That's how out of touch people are on this stuff and on these issues. And, you know, at the very least, we're going to make sure we're pushing back on those facts. And speaking of that, Back the Blue, tour stop. I guess this would be tour stop number 5. I'm just going to announce this right now. What have we've done? Clay County, Gladstone, Olathe. So would this only be 3? I feel like this would no. We had a 4th in there.
Prairie Village, right?
Prairie Village.
Yes.
I don't want to forget my friends in Prairie Village. So this will be tour stop number 5. The first 2 were in Missouri. The most recent 2 were in Kansas. We're going back to Missouri. We're going to Independence 3 weeks from tomorrow, April 26th. Woo! Let's go. We're fired up for that. Of course, they just lost Officer Allen, so I reached out to Chief Dustman, and we'll be out there in Independence April 26th, end of the month, for our next Back the Blue tour stop number 5, John. I can't wait, man.
Yep,
fired
that's
up.
Right. Yep. I'm just sitting here with my microphone on, just having a good time.
Oh, yeah.
So. I know we're looking to eat up a few minutes, so I thought maybe I'll
never.
do some poetry.
No, I don't want any poetry out of you. I don't want. I want no poetry, none
Jack
whatsoever.
and Jill went up the
No, we're not. It's not poetry
I
hour.
can give you a police haiku.
No, I don't want that crap from you guys. Turn your mics off.
All right. Okay,
all right. I
sorry.
got a little bit of a cold, but I'm not that bad.
All right.
I don't need you guys.
Well, you can't really tell.
No, I don't need you guys reading poetry on the air.
Anything?
Oh
Okay.
no, I'm a hard pass on that.
All right, my apologies.
No, it's fine. It's okay.
I stand chastened and rebuked.
Okay, that's fine. It's okay. We'll let it slide. The audience will let it slide as we roll till 7 o'clock on KCMO Talk Radio. But what I do want to also hit the reset button on, because this is going to be a story that we follow extensively here on KCMO. Where do we go from here? What happens now after Tuesday? Quentin Lucas is going to join us at 7:30, of course, on that issue. But suddenly you hear a lot of noise coming out of our friends in Kansas. And I just want to make it loud and clear, and I will say it until all the goobers in Topeka hear it. If you guys, if your egos are going to allow you to try to give billions of dollars in Kansas taxpayer monies to these teams, you are suckers. And every single one of you should be thrown out of office because you want to go into a suite at Arrowhead West in Wyandotte County. Shame on you if that's the approach that you take. I hope like heck this does not get any serious consideration. There is not a tax base in Wyandotte County that could possibly pay for this. There's only 160,000 people in Wyandotte County. Jackson County is 700,000. But if Kansas legislators and Governor Kelly are going to think the best thing to do with their $2+ billion reserves, which is really our money. It's not like when people, just remember that, when you hear people talk about how a state has X amount of money in reserves, those bastards have our money. Let's be clear about that, okay? It's not their money. They don't exist without our money. And if you think the answer for them is going to be to send your tax dollars to the Chiefs and the Royals right now, after what happened in Jackson County last week, shame on them. There is a deal to be worked out between the teams that can be in everybody's best interests. That can be in the best interest of the taxpayer. That can be in the best interest of the teams. Those deals exist. That deal does exist. It can happen. I don't think Jackson County, I know the vote was a debacle, but if handled better, Jackson County can get this thing done next year. And that's where I hope the teams' heads are at. And that's where I also hope other area legislators' heads are at. Not saying, well, the Jackson County taxpayer didn't want to get hosed, so you know what? Why don't we hose our own taxpayers? That ain't the answer. Now, speaking of Jackson County, where are we at on this ransomware attack? You want to talk about incompetency, just another example of that in Jackson County? We'll do it and share the latest coming up next on KCMO 95.7 FM. In many ways, it was the most Jackson County thing to happen on Tuesday, and it got a little bit overlooked. But Jackson County got hit with a ransomware attack on the same day they had the most interesting local election in decades. You can't write the script if you tried. It's great to be here on a Thursday on KCMO. Mayor Lucas will be here at the bottom of the hour, our first conversation since the vote went up in flames on Tuesday. But, of course, on Tuesday, Jackson County confirmed that this ransomware attack took place, and it disrupted several county services, including the county assessment department. You have an assessment department that is still dealing, of course, with these horrible property assessments that have been ongoing since last summer. And residents in Jackson County have no answer. And it's one of the big things that I believe got overlooked by the Vote Yes folks as to why this vote failed on Tuesday. People are still beyond pissed about their assessments. And this was a chance for them to stick it to the county and basically say, we're not doing more of this right now. You guys have not cleaned up your act. Now, you might say these two things are separate. Doesn't matter. It does not matter. People are fed up. They're annoyed. So KCTV5 had this report yesterday on where we're at with the ransomware attack and how you had residents in Jackson County getting calls to show up to the courthouse, but the courthouse was closed.
Phyllis Hampton was waiting for an appointment with Jackson County Notary Services on Tuesday. She got a text letting her know to arrive at the historic Truman Courthouse in Independence.
It says, thanks, your estimated time is now 1 minute. 1 minute for what?
She called beforehand because she had heard of the ransomware attack.
And I called and she said, yeah, I've got your paperwork. Just come on down and be here at your appointed time.
She arrived, the doors locked, a situation many facing Tuesday.
They've had a lot of problems.
Following long lines and wait times over the last few months, the assessment department and county executive Frank White Jr. now dealing with this problem. Tax payments and online property, marriage license and inmate searches all down until further notice.
You can't hide from these situations, good, bad, or indifferent.
Shut up, man.
The reality of leadership is you got to be present.
All right. Leadership, you got to be present. And I'm going to whore myself out for every media interview I can get my hands on, said legislator Manny Abarca. I mean, this is such a problem for Jackson County. But here's the bigger picture point that I believe everybody should take out of Tuesday, whether you voted yes or you voted no. I hope there's a lot of people with the Vote Yes campaign that realize who is in these local elected offices matter. And that's not me saying they have to be Republicans or anything like that. They just need to be competent, thoughtful, somewhat mainstream Democrats. We know that Jackson County is going to lean Democrat. That's not a surprise to anybody. I know some people think that Tuesday is about, conservative causes winning. It's not. It's not that at all. But who's in the county executive's office? Who's in these legislator seats matters. And Jackson County, like so many, by the way, of these county commissioners and local level politicians, they're just very unimpressive. They are. I mean, for a lot of them, they're people who are just bored. They're looking for ego trips. They're looking to kind of further their political future, and they feel like this is the right way and the best way to go about doing it. Whether it's Frank White, who, by the way, 85,000 people voted in that election against Teresa Galvin in 22, John.
Yeah, November 22.
John crunched the numbers. We had 135,000 show up on Tuesday.
So, yeah.
Imagine if the turnout was that level in 22 for the county executives race. County would be in much better shape right now.
I was saying, if there's 50,000 people that were so interested in sticking it to Frank White, if they'd have shown up there.
Yeah.
He had about 64,000 votes. Teresa had 22.
Yeah.
So there was quite a wide margin on his victory on top of that. So
was it that big? That was like a 10-point win.
Yeah. No, I don't think so.
Wow. Well, either way, I mean,
dig that back up.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter.
The other day.
The point is, you look at that and you say to yourself, wow, imagine if all those people showed up. Imagine if they showed up and went out there and they voted in their local elections like they did on Tuesday. If they cared about their county legislator races, if they cared about their city council races, their county administrators, their county executives, all these different things. Could you imagine how much better that would have been? That's unbelievable. I mean, that's one of those things that you just don't see happen. And I'm going to correct what we just talked about here because I have this in front of me. Frank White got 118,000 votes. Teresa Galvin got 95,000 as I look at this on Ballotpedia. But there's a lot of people who went out and voted for the stadiums that didn't go out and vote in their local elections the last couple of years. So that's just embarrassing. And those people need to show up. And the Vote Yes people, the big business people in Jackson County and around the community and around the region for that matter, they need to realize and they need to wake up and get involved in these local elections. A guy like Manny Abarca has no business running a lemonade stand. Never mind being a county legislator. But remember, he was in a Democratic primary in that first district in Jackson County where it was him or that guy Justice Horny. What are you laughing at, Mark? What's so funny? What are you chuckling at, man? What you think that's his name, right?
Close.
Justice Horny?
Horn.
Oh, his name's Horn?
Yeah, but he did take his shirt off that one time.
Yeah, I thought he was Justice Horny. Okay, so he's Justice Horn.
Yeah.
I just think of him, doing shirtless selfies with his pepperoni nipples on social media. So I thought his name was Justice Horny. But either way, I mean, you want to talk about the tallest midget. That's exactly what that race was in that Democratic primary. And you knew that a Dem was going to come out on top in that race. You knew that was going to happen. So it would behoove the money people in this town to get more involved in these local elections and realize that who runs for these offices matters. Instead of the pathetic cast of characters that we end up with in these county legislators, as county executive, I mean, it's really just pathetic. Some of the people who are making some of the most important decisions and are impacting your day-to-day lives, our day-to-day lives, every day in the Kansas City region. And part of the problem is that good people don't want to run for office anymore. They don't. It's a headache. They don't want to be bothered by it. They want nothing to do with politics. Now, don't get me wrong. There's a lot of good people. I have a lot of good friends who are in office right now who are actively running for office. But trust me, there's a lot of people who are doing it for the wrong reasons. And they need to be sniffed out and they need to be smoked out. And the sooner it happens at every level, the better off we're all going to be. And whether it's the Hunt family, the Sherman family, the ownership group of both of these teams, let's be honest, they usually keep themselves at an arm's length. And I'm not saying they got to go out there and advocate and go door to door and John Sherman's handing out flyers. But it would behoove them to realize that who is in these seats in these county legislative offices, it matters. It matters to them. It matters to the region. And we've got to make sure that we get the best of the best in there that we can. Because right now, we sure as heck don't have it. Whether it's the county executive office, the county assessor, which unfortunately is not elected, that's appointed, to the county legislators. It's an embarrassment in large part, top to bottom. We're warming up as we get into the weekend on KCMO Talk Radio. Tim Smith, the Vote No campaign manager, is about 12 minutes away. And Tony's Kansas City, the man himself, Tony Mateo, 9 o'clock here on KCMO 95.7 FM. On the text line, which is 913-408-7957, Pete, is the Clay County land vacant, almost ready to build on? Meaning that land up in North KC that the Royals were looking at. Well, I know they started bulldozing the old bowling alley that was up there, just due south of Chapels, which is where North Kansas City and Clay County were hoping the Royals would build. They, of course, rejected that idea and decided to go downtown. But I think Clay County is back in the mix. I think it should be. Jerry Nolte, Clay County Commission, talked to KCTV5 about this last night and said the following.
The thing is, this location in North Kansas City, Clay County, is a great location. It's very large. It's under this ownership of basically one entity. And I think that we've got an opportunity here, whether with the Royals or whether with another organization, to see some real positive development for Clay County.
And Jerry Nolte, of course, who's been a guest on the show, is right about that. Tomorrow we're going to have on Commissioner Scott Wagner to talk about whether or not Clay County is going to make a serious play once again. But the most important thing to note that Jerry Nolte talked about last night is that nothing is happening this year.
I don't see the timeline being there for a 2024 effort. One never tries never to say never, but I just don't see the timeline there. And once again, we can't go forward unless we are convinced and unless the people convince us that they see this as a positive way forward.
Now, what he's referring to there at the end is, of course, the taxpayer, the voter in Clay County. What I heard, and I shared this with you at the time, but what I heard is that the Royals wanted to put a 1-cent sales tax on the ballot in Clay County. 1 penny. Now, that's you might, well, that's a big sales tax. Remember, we were talking about the Chiefs and the Royals splitting 3/8 of a cent. So they each get 3/16 of a penny on every transaction. That's less than a 1/4 cent sales tax. You're talking about more than 4 times that in Clay County. Now, you kind of have to do that to get the same monies because Clay County has 225, is it 225? Let me pull it up real quick. 257 in Clay County. So about a third of what you've got in Jackson. Let's give or take, about a third. So you've got to have a bigger sales tax to get the same monies. And apparently, from what I gathered, Clay County was like, we ain't putting a penny sales tax on the ballot. That's bad business. It's too much money. And by the way, good for them. That is too much money. That's a big nut, a penny sales tax. So they shut it down. And then apparently that was the deal breaker, or at least part of the deal breaker. And then that sent the Royals back south of the river. So is that back in the conversation? Sure. But I think a lot of people in Clay County, I don't mean residents, I mean the political powers, are going to be very hesitant to put a major sales tax on the ballot in the wake of what just happened in Jackson County. Now, the good news for the teams would be, or at least the Royals, not the Chiefs, the Royals would be they would still have to deal with KC Tenants nonsense, but the Tenants are far less influential in Clay because there's just a sliver of Kansas City, Missouri that's in Clay. And they call themselves, of course, Kansas City Tenants, so they're really focused on KC Mo. So they're not going to have to deal nearly as much with the clown show that is KC Tenants, but there still are going to be other hurdles because a lot of people in Clay County are going to look to Jackson and they're going to say, why do we want that? Unless the ego overrules things here. 913-408-7957. Let's go to you. Let's go up to Clay County in Gladstone. Wes is on 95.7 FM. What's up, Wes? Good morning.
Yeah, Pete. Well, the pocketbook up here is going to overcome the ego. Okay, I mean it's just not going to happen. I've just randomly talking to people when the North KC site was in play. Nobody's for higher taxes up here. Okay, I just think it's a no. It is a non-starter here, and I think the 400-pound gorilla. Well, there's two 400-pound gorillas that everybody doesn't want to talk about. One, you cannot go build a downtown stadium where you just had a reenactment of the shootout at the OK Corral at a victory parade, where 15 children got shot. It just doesn't make sense, man. And I'm looking at the Google image of up by the Legends now. The land is up there to go build the stadium. If you want to build this entertainment ballpark village type thing, there it is, man. That would make that area a world-class venue, a world-class area, with the baseball stadium there. And then if the Chiefs moved up there, too, that'd be a one in the kind in the world. That would be a crown jewel, man.
How much are they going to want? They can't, Wyandotte County doesn't have the population base to do anything on a sales tax. They got 160,000 people there. That's nothing.
That's why they drag in Johnson County for it too, man.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, Johnson County's been obviously very hesitant, and I get it. A lot of people feel like Johnson County's been mooching off the region for a while, so I understand that sentiment does exist out there. I've heard plenty of it.
Well, I just think with the access there,
yeah, it
just makes sense, man. You can put your retractable dome stadium there. You can get the Final Fours. You can get NCAA. You could even get a bowl game.
See,
right?
I say this, and it's a good call, Wes. I say this as a guy who is a massive sports fan. I don't care. Getting a Final Four once every 25 years, maybe. I don't care. Getting a Super Bowl every 50 years, maybe. I don't care. And I say that as a diehard sports fan. I don't think a state, and that would have to be the state, should be potentially dumping billions of dollars for that opportunity. That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't think that's good business for anybody. There's something that works out for the taxpayer and the teams. That's a different story. But this whole promise of the Final Fours and everything else, I'm not buying it. And I say that as a guy who loves sports and has covered those events and has been to them and, thinks they're great.
We're not a warm weather town with any predictability.
Well, that's true, too.
Our coastline's already taken up with one stadium, so down on the Missouri River, we're not, we're just in the rotation, like you say. We're not a place to be in it every couple of years because we're Vegas, because we're on the ocean or what have you.
It's not going to be Miami, Phoenix, Vegas, New Orleans. It's not going to be in that rotation where you get one every 5, 6, 7 years. You're absolutely right about that. Jeff's in Kansas City. Jeff, what's up? Oh, Shawnee. Sorry, Jeff. Go ahead, buddy.
Yeah, just got back from Arizona. Hey, I think I got 2 points to make. I think it came down to crime, period, because, like I said, I'm the one that called in that took my wife down to 18th and Vine. And another thing, too, I figured out how to raise up the money for this thing. Easy peasy, man. You got ready for this one?
I don't know if I'm ready for it, Jeff. I can't tell you if I'm ready, but let's hear it there, big guy. You've hyped it up.
I want credit for this, and this is going to win.
All right, Jeff. Give the idea first before you start patting yourself on the back, okay?
You're going to love this, man.
All
Missouri, right. Oklahoma, Nebraska, Colorado, all the states that, are Chiefs players or Chiefs fans, Royals fans. Quick Trip is sponsoring the Royals right now, right?
Yeah.
Round up your change, brother. Round up your change.
Okay, Jeff.
Everybody that comes in from St. Louis and everybody that watches the Chiefs and the Royals just start rounding up your change, right? Farmers, Taco Bell, easy peasy. People just add it on to the man.
Okay. All right, Jeff. We'll see if that one gets any legs, buddy. I don't have high hopes for it.
That would get me. I do the roundup thing every now and again.
Dave Ramsey would chew your ass out. Give your money to charities that you want to give it to. Don't give your money to charities that Hy-Vee or Dunkin' Donuts or Quick Trip want to give it to, where you don't know if it's actually getting there. Do not do, Mark, come on. You're better than that. You're smarter than that. Don't do don't get guilted into the roundup thing.
I
give
just don't
your
like
money.
change.
Well, who pays in cash anyway?
Me.
You pay in cash? You serious?
Occasionally, yeah.
Oh, come on. You're rounding up on the card, and now you're trying to back out of it. That's what you're doing here. I don't want to hear it, John.
Just happened the other day with me and the missus, going to go, okay, well, that complete order, yeah, that'll be it. Would you like to round up?
No.
What's the total? I wasn't even told the total.
The roundup thing, you want to get me going on a tirade Tuesday, I'll do it right now. That roundup thing is ridiculous.
It's just like the tip thing on the flip pad, right?
Yes. I will give my money where I want it to go. I'm here to buy apples, not to give to a freaking charity. I'll do that on my own time. I will be charitable. I will be generous to where I want to be charitable and generous.
If it's going to the Chiefs in Kansas, I might be generous to that, though.
Go down to Oklahoma. As someone who used to live in Oklahoma, go down there and start asking them if they want to round up their change to pay for the Chiefs and their stadium that they'll go to once every 10 years. That'll go over great in Oklahoma. Guys will start, pulling out their guns on people in Quick Trip. That's what's going to happen down there, I promise you.
They're getting a new arena for the Thunder, right?
They are. Yeah, they are. They did vote on that. You're right.